The call came on a gray November afternoon while I was reviewing quarterly reports in my Portland office. My father's name flashed across the screen, and for a moment I let myself feel a small hope. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe for once he was reaching out with something other than a perfunctory update. "Celeste," he said, his voice clipped, businesslike. "About Thanksgiving." I waited, pen poised above the page. "Your mother and I have decided it would be best if you didn't come this year." He paused just long enough for the weight of the words to sink in. "Marina is bringing Adrien, and we want things to go smoothly. He comes from a very respectable family, and we don't want complications." Complications? That was what I had become to them, not a daughter, not even an afterthought. Just a potential embarrassment in a room they wanted polished for someone else. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I see," I managed. "Good," he replied, relief clear in his tone. "We'll talk after the holidays." Then the line went dead. I set the phone down slowly, staring at the city skyline beyond my office window. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the outlines of bridges and buildings. For years I had known the truth. Marina was the chosen one, the one to be celebrated. Still, hearing the rejection so plainly spoken reopened wounds I thought I had buried. I leaned back in my chair, steadying my breath. I had built a life of substance, a company from nothing. Yet in their eyes, I was still less than my sister's +1. The old ache of invisibility pressed in. But beneath it, something else stirred a spark I hadn't felt in years. With that spark, memories I had tried to leave behind began to return. They came as they always did, quietly at first, then all at once. Like a film I couldn't stop replaying. Eugene in the late 90s smelled of wet pine and woods. But inside our house, everything revolved around Marina. Her piano recital drew a crowd of parents, teachers, and neighbors who clapped as though she were destined for Carnegie Hall. When she traded piano keys for tennis rackets, Dad drove her to lessons 3 times a week and cheered from the sidelines. Rain or shine, I remember standing in the kitchen doorway, holding the program from my debate tournament, waiting for someone to ask how it went. They never did. Mom fussed with Marina's costume. Dad reminded her to smile for the camera. And I learned that silence was easier than asking for space that was never offered. By the time Marina turned 16, a shiny silver Honda sat in the driveway with a bow on top. She needed to get to practice. Dad explained, his arm draped proudly around her shoulders. When I asked about a car for myself, he shook his head. "You're resourceful, Celeste. You'll figure something out." And I did, walking, biking, scraping together money for bus fare while working after-school shifts at the local diner. College wasn't any different. The savings account my parents had built for Marina's tuition had been accumulating since she was born. When it came time for me, Dad was blunt. "We always knew Marina would need more support. You've always been independent." Independence, their word for neglect, became the foundation of my life. Scholarships, loans, part-time jobs, I pieced together what they wouldn't give. And though resentment burned, so did a fire no one else could claim credit for. That fire smoldered through sleepless nights and every rejection, preparing me for the life I was determined to build far beyond Eugene. At Oregon State, I learned just how far exhaustion could stretch a body. My days began before sunrise in the campus library, shelving books for minimum wage. Afternoons, I served coffee in a crowded cafe downtown. Evenings, I closed shifts at a diner on Monroe Avenue. Between shifts, I crammed lectures, labs, and every spare moment I could steal to practice coding on a second-hand laptop that overheated if I pushed it too hard. Sleep became optional. Determination was mandatory. If my parents wouldn't invest in me, I would invest in myself until there was nothing left to give. 4 years blurred into one relentless grind. But I walked across that stage with honors, clutching a degree in computer science and business administration. After graduation, I moved north to Portland, finding work at a small startup inside a converted warehouse. The pay barely covered rent in my crumbling studio, but the work was priceless. I stayed late after everyone left, teaching myself the systems until I understood them better than the managers who signed my paychecks. My weekends were spent sketching out ideas no one asked for, chasing the thought that I could build something sharper, something different. Meanwhile, Marina floated. 1 month, she was interning with a boutique fashion line in Los Angeles. The next, she was curating social media content for an influencer about to blow up. She sent glossy rooftop photos, her life lit in neon, while I coded nights with takeout cartons stacked around my desk. I stopped waiting for my parents to notice. Their calls brimmed with Marina's adventures while I bit my tongue and turned my silence into fuel. By the time I pitched my first product to investors, I was used to skepticism. They saw a young woman with no safety net and no name that opened doors, but I knew how to push through doubt. I had been doing it my whole life, and I wasn't about to stop. Thanksgiving morning crept in beneath a steel-colored sky. From my Pearl District apartment, I could hear faint parade coverage drifting from a neighbor's TV. I tried to bury myself in work, but the buzzing notifications betrayed me. Marina's post appeared first, her arm looped around Audrian's, my parents, standing proudly beside them at the familiar oak dining table. My father's smile was wide, my mother's hand resting gently on Adrienne's sleeve. Marina's caption read, "So grateful for family and new beginnings." I stared at the photo longer than I should have, the ache pressing hard against my chest. 5 bedrooms in that old house, yet somehow no room for me. By noon, I gave up pretending the day would pass like any other. I heated soup from a can, sat at the counter, and told myself solitude was strength. But the walls felt closer than usual. The silence ladder. The phone rang. Rowan's voice spilled through before I could even greet him. "You're not spending the day alone, Celeste. Get over here. My mom has more food than we can eat, and she's been asking about you." I resisted, mumbling excuses about work. But Rowan cut me off. "No, bring a bottle of wine if you must, but get in the car. You've been family to me since freshman year, and that means you're family to them too." An hour later, I stepped into the warmth of his parents' house in Northwest Portland. The scent of sage and roasted turkey wrapped around me. Rowan's nieces darted between adults carrying plates, and his father carved the bird with practiced ease. A place was set for me without question, a glass poured before I asked. I laughed more than I expected, listening to stories that weren't mine yet still had room for me. Rowan's mother pressed a second slice of pie into my hands, smiling. "Eat." She said simply, "You belong here." That evening, as I drove home along streets aglow with holiday lights, I realized that belonging wasn't dictated by family ties. It was about the doors that opened for you and the chairs that waited until you arrived. As December loomed, I buried myself in work again, anticipating the reminder I knew would come soon. The month blurred into long office nights, my team racing to finalize contracts that would define the year ahead. When the signatures dried, we had secured deals with 2 major West Coast companies, partnerships that would elevate our platform from promising to essential. By January, I was shuttling between Portland and Seattle weekly, supervising the launch of a second office overlooking Elliott Bay. It should have been overwhelming, yet it felt like momentum finally catching up to years of effort. When Forbes named me one of their tech women to watch, I sat in my apartment, staring at the glossy pages with a mixture of disbelief and pride. My name line stood out in bold letters that no one could ignore, ignoring my better judgment. I called home. Maybe this time they would truly hear me. Mom answered, her voice warm but brisk. "Celeste, dear, it's late. Is everything okay?" "I have news," I began carefully. "Titushan just opened a Seattle office, and Forbes featured me this month." "That's nice," she interrupted, her tone already shifting. "You'll never guess Marina and Adrienne are considering moving to Boston. Adrienne got a promotion at his firm. It's a huge step up for them, living near his family again. Can you imagine?" I closed my eyes, my free hand tightening around the armrest. "That's great for them," I said evenly. "Oh, it is," she gushed. "Everyone is so impressed with Adrienne. His firm has the most prestigious clients. Marina will love it there." I listened as she wove a narrative of borrowed prestige, Adrienne's salary, Adrienne's family, Adrienne's promising career, while my own accomplishments vanished beneath the glare of someone else's reflected light. When the call ended, I sat in silence, the magazine still open on my lap. The outside world recognized me, celebrated me, validated my sacrifices. Yet inside the home where I had once pleaded for acknowledgement, nothing had changed. Marina remained the star, even when her glow came solely from someone else's light. I closed the magazine and set it aside. If their attention only came through Adrienne, I would stop seeking it. My worth was mine, not theirs to validate. By February, contracts multiplied, the Seattle office grew, and I worked later than ever. The ache of exclusion lingered, but clarity had emerged, clarity that would matter when. Leona from HR arrived with a folder bearing my sister's name. It was a rainy February morning when Leona knocked, a folder tucked under her arm, half smiling. Like she was amused but cautious. I gestured for her to enter, bracing for the curveball ahead. We've been narrowing down candidates for the senior strategy role, she said, placing the folder on my desk. I thought you might want to see this one. I opened it and froze. At the top in bold letters was Marina Hartwell. Her resume looked polished, formatting crisp. But the content told a different story. A defunct boutique firm listed as executive consultant. Participation in campaigns she'd only observed. Unclaimed language and coding skills she had never acquired. Confidence first, substance optional. That was Marina. Leona raised an eyebrow. She applied through the general portal. She didn't realize who sits here. Of course not. My public profile was discreet. Press releases often used my middle name, Victoria. To Marina, Titian was just another rung she could leap to climb. Old resentment flared. After years of benefiting at my expense, she was here again, reaching for what I built without acknowledgement. Treat it like any other application, I said. If she doesn't meet criteria, she doesn't move forward. Leona studied me, then nodded. All right, we'll handle it by the book. Later, sitting at the far end of the conference table, I watched Marina enter for interviews, heels clicking confidently. She carried herself as though she already belonged. The panel asked the usual questions. Devin, our technical director, requested she explain a project where she managed complex systems. Marina offered vague, nameless accounts, dismissing methodology. With a laugh, I focus on vision and connections. Details are for the technical staff. Sophie, our senior strategist, exchanged a glance with Devin. Unimpressed. Marina rattled off acquaintances' names, sprinkled in buzzwords, and appeared polished but not competent. Then Jasmine, head of HR, signaled me. I stood, walking to the head of the table. Marina's eyes widened as recognition hit all at once. Her smile faltered. Hello, Marina, I said evenly. It's been a while. You're that CEO, she stammered. I nodded, sliding her resume forward. According to this, you were an executive consultant at Blake & Company until last year. I spoke with a partner last month, and they recalled you as an assistant. Can you clarify? Color rose in her cheeks. Titles are flexible, she muttered. And you list Python proficiency, I continued. Could you outline a basic API? Call? Her silence spoke for her. I closed the folder. Thank you for your time. HR will follow up. She gathered her papers, mask slipping, and hurried out. The reckoning had only begun. No sooner had I sat back when the door burst open. Marina stormed in, cheeks flushed, eyes sharp. What the hell was that? She demanded, slamming her portfolio down. You humiliated me in front of strangers. You planned this. I kept my voice steady, I said. You applied for a position you weren't qualified for. What you experienced was a standard interview. Before she could respond, the receptionist buzzed. Your parents are here, she said hesitantly. They insist on speaking with you. Seconds later, Gregory and Elaine entered, expressions grim. My father didn't waste words. Family helps family, he declared. You're in a position to give your sister this job. Do it. I rose slowly, meeting his eyes. This company stands on merit, not favors. I won't undermine what I've built to protect Marina from consequences. Elaine tried to soften the blow. Celeste, think about what this can mean for her. She's been struggling. A chance here could turn things around. I'm not denying her a chance, I said. But it will be an entry-level role where she can learn and prove herself like everyone else. Marina scoffed. Entry-level after all I've done? You've always been jealous, Celeste. Always trying to prove you're better. Something in me snapped. Jealous? My voice shook, but not from weakness. I worked 3 jobs to pay for school while you got a car at 16. I built this company without a dime of support while you bounced from one failed venture to the next. And even now, after Forbes and 2 offices and contracts worth millions, all you see is someone who should shrink. So you can shine. Silence filled the room. For once, no one interrupted me. In that silence, I realized I had finally spoken aloud what I had carried in my chest since childhood. The fallout came quickly. Word reached me through mutual acquaintances that Marina had been let go from her firm. Not long after, Adrienne disappeared from her social media feeds, their carefully staged photos vanishing as if they had never existed. For the first time in her life, Marina was without both status and a safety net of borrowed prestige. 2 weeks later, my building's concierge called to say my parents were in the lobby. I almost told him to turn them away. Instead, curiosity or maybe habit made me buzz them in. They looked smaller in my living room than I remembered. Gregory's shoulders slumped, Eileen's eyes scanning the walls as though searching for pieces of a daughter she had never bothered to know. "Thank you for seeing us," my mother began, her voice tentative. "We should have come sooner." Gregory cleared his throat. "Mine has been having a hard time. We hoped you might consider helping her." The request hung in the air like smoke, but for once, they didn't press. Elaine surprised me by asking quietly, "How did you do it, Celeste? Build all of this on your own?" I told them pieces, late nights, endless rejections, the stubborn belief that no one could take away what I built with my own hands. As I spoke, I saw something shift in her face. Not pride, not yet, but recognition. It didn't erase the years of silence or favoritism, but it was more acknowledgement than I had ever received. When they left, the apartment felt strangely quiet, as if their presence had unsettled something I kept locked away. And soon enough, Marina herself would come knocking. Spring turned into summer before I saw Marina again. She came to the office dressed simply, her resume pared down to the truth. Gone were the inflated titles and grand claims. She applied for an entry-level marketing coordinator position, and this time she made no requests for special treatment. When the offer came, she accepted without hesitation. On her first day, she stopped by my office, standing in the doorway like someone unsure of her welcome. "I want to do this right," she said quietly. "I'll start at the bottom if that's what it takes." I nodded, not offering forgiveness, but something steadier, opportunity. Months later, an invitation arrived in the mail. My parents were celebrating their 40th anniversary. There was no caveat, no carefully worded exclusion, just a simple request: "Please join us." I went, not out of longing, but curiosity. The dining room looked the same as it had when I was a child. The oak table, the crystal glasses, but something was different. A seat had been set for me without hesitation, as though it had always been mine. Conversations stumbled at times, old habits lingering, but when Marina asked me about work, it wasn't with envy, it was with interest. As we raised our glasses to toast, I realized I no longer needed their approval to feel whole. What I wanted, what I had built, was respect, and that was finally beginning to take shape. Family, I thought, isn't about the ones who keep you waiting in the shadows. It's about the ones who make room when you walk through the door. And that night, for the first time in years, I sat at the table as myself.